How can turboprop engines be delivered to distant customers? Hello lovely YouTube family, welcome back to the Luxury Kingdom. In today's videos, we're going to talk about how can turboprop engines be delivered to distant customers. Before we start, I would want you to hit that red subscribe button so that you never miss out on any of our videos. Building and delivering aircraft. The most numerous commercial turboprops are the ATR series, ATR-42 and ATR-72, and the Dash 8. These are assembled in France and Canada respectively, whilst some components are made overseas. Neither company has an overseas production line, and all completed aircraft are shipped out from these bases. Some aircraft, particularly smaller and simpler turboprops, may be shipped by land and sea, but for larger aircraft they are usually flown to their customer, a process known as ferrying. Aircraft may also need ferrying after first delivery onto another buyer for maintenance checks or finally to storage or scrap. ATR and Dash 8 customers are located worldwide and certainly not just in Europe and North America. The largest customer for the ATR-72 is Wings Air in Indonesia, part of Lion Air, Brazilian airline Azul Linhas Aéreas, Indian airline Indigo, Thai airline Bangkok Airways, and Air New Zealand all operate sizable fleets. Wings Air ATR-72. Wings Air currently operates 68 ATR-72 aircraft in Indonesia. Major overseas operators of the Dash 8 include Qantas Link in Australia, Norwegian airline Widerøe, Japanese ANA, and the Ethiopian Airlines. All these airlines have had aircraft delivered at some point, but how? Clearly, any long-distance ferry flight is going to involve several steps, but there is a lot more involved than just stopping along the way. Increasing the range. The first thing to realize is that the quoted range of any aircraft is based on its commercial operation, without passengers or cargo, and possibly with some of the interior fittings removed and shipped separately. An operator can extend this range. ATR-72 600. Extra fuel tanks are also a possibility on some aircraft. This is a commonly used technique for smaller, lighter aircraft. 2 to 4 seat general aviation aircraft, for example, have an even shorter range and still often need to be ferried across large distances. They will sometimes have additional fuel storage fitted in the main cabin of the aircraft to extend the range. But this is less common with larger turboprops. There are no reports of it happening with ATR aircraft, for example. Adding extra tanks would be technically challenging and require significant modification. And the range is already high enough to allow feasible long-distance routes with stops. This sometimes happens with smaller jet aircraft as well. Hawaiian Airlines is known to do this with its Boeing 717 aircraft to fly them from and to the mainland for delivery and service. It adds additional fuel storage in the main cabin to extend the range. Economic cruising. The range can also be increased by flying differently. In commercial service, aircraft will use cruise at a maximum safe speed, but for technical or ferry flights, the range can be prioritized over flight time and a more economical cruise speed chosen. There are also techniques for saving fuel and thus extending range in the climb and when descending. ATR publishes guidance for this for the ATR-42 and 72, showing how different power profiles can improve efficiency. Discussion among pilots on airliners.net suggests that the range of the ATR-72 can be decreased to as much as 2,000 nautical miles or 3,700 kilometers and a flight time of 8 hours. There are plenty of examples of ferry flights with sectors much longer than the published commercial range. Azul, for example, has flown Santiago, Cape Verde, Rai to Natal, Brazil, NAT as part of its ATR-72 ferry flights. This is a distance of 2,639 kilometers, far exceeding the advertised range. Making plenty of stops. No matter how much extra range is squeezed out of the aircraft, long-distance ferry flights will involve many stops to refuel. In some ways, this goes back to the early days of aviation when any long-haul route would be a multiple stop, often a multiple-day affair. Coming over the Atlantic, and for flights from Canada, stops can be made in Canada, Greenland, or Iceland before reaching the UK. For trans-Pacific routes, operators would usually choose to take an Atlantic route and then cross Europe and Asia. Trans-Pacific routes via Alaska are possible, but distances are longer and weather conditions tougher. Timing flights for weather and wind conditions. Along with choosing a route and making plenty of stops, ferry flights can be planned to take full advantage of the weather. With strong headwinds, for example, the range will be significantly decreased, so for some sectors, the flight will be planned around winds, or the aircraft will simply wait until conditions are right. The jet stream has a significant effect on any long flight. These air current flows from west to east, making easterly flights faster than westerly ones. This particularly affects Transatlantic flights to the Americas, which may need more stops than the other way, as with normal commercial flights, the route and flight level can be chosen to take advantage of the jet stream or minimize the impact. It makes sense to wait until jet stream conditions are optimal. It certainly does for other weather conditions too, with operations closer to the limits and fewer diversion airports in remote regions. Minimizing weather risk is important. Brave flying. Ferry flying has a reputation for being dangerous and a risky undertaking. This is truer for smaller aircraft, but there is still some risk to pushing the limits of larger turboprops. Ferry flights involve flying close to range limits, encountering varied weather, and using remote and often more challenging airports. Risks are much higher with smaller aircraft. Light aircraft have even shorter ranges, again extended using additional fuel and economical flying, and fly much lower, so they encounter more extreme weather. Transatlantic routes in such an aircraft are a challenging task. Cessna Caravan. This is discussed well in a BBC article where the son of a ferry pilot who died whilst flying in Canada recalls his father's work and looks at the industry today. Ultimately, the author explains it is not a job for mavericks, and staying safe comes down to detailed planning and only flying in the right conditions. Ferry flying pushes the limits of turboprop and makes for some exciting routes. There are plenty more examples of aircraft ferry routes. Feel free to discuss more in the comments below. And that is all for today, folks. I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so that you never miss any amazing videos from us.